Welcome back to Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. My name is Sean Teis. I'm excited to have my guest today, Joe Kennedy. He is very well known. You may not know his name, but you know his story. And so, Joe, I want to give you an opportunity to tell just a little bit about your story. I know once you start talking about it, everybody's going to be like, "Hey, I know who this guy is." So go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Bremerton, Washington, and the high school that I graduated from, I started coaching after I got out of the Marine Corps after 20 years. And next thing you know, I'm coaching, and things got really crazy. I was praying by myself, and then the team wanted to come out, and we did this for 8 years. So we had the whole entire team out there praying, and it was never a big deal until the 8th year. Then things went sideways. The school didn't want me to pray anymore, and that's where everybody started hearing about it. Was the praying coach, which was really weird in my mind. That of all the things that I was getting in trouble for, praying was never one of them that crossed my mind. But I had to take it to the Supreme Court because they told me to take. I had to choose between my job or my faith, and as an American, that didn't sit right with me. So we took it to court. It was in the news for almost 8 years while we were going through the courts, and it went to the Supreme Court twice. So if anybody Googles it, to be like, "Oh yeah, I know that story," but yeah, our memories are so good that we forget what was in the news last week.
Yeah. And I was at a convention and I heard them talking about your story. I'm like, I've heard this story before. And so I was why I was intrigued. And then you started sharing more about yourself. But I also got a copy of your book, Average Joe's, a new book you just came out with recently. You want to tell us about your book?
Yeah, and so everybody tells you just see things on the headlines, or you see a Snapchat or an Instagram post, or even just a Twitter feed, only so many characters. You never really get to hear the whole story. And what I wanted to do was just share where I came from, how I got to the point of where I was coaching, and why this meant so much to me. And I wanted to share the whole background to inspire people that no matter who you are, where you come from, if God could take, a schmuck like me and change the nation in the Supreme Court over the First Amendment, imagine what he could do with everybody else. So this really fills in all the blanks, and for people to go, "Oh wow, that guy's interesting life." So yeah, it kind of tells the whole story of me.
And I love the title because honestly, it goes with when I met you, you were just so down to earth, and you honestly, that's your personality. Like you're laid back. When when you go up and talk to some people, they act like they're on a different level than you sometimes, and you weren't like that. And that's why I love the title of your book, Average Joe, because it goes right along with that, and it tells your story. And I'm sure everybody listening has heard the story about him being a coach and how he just fought against the odds of against all the stuff that was happening, and he was able to win and get. It says you got reinstated back in fall of 2023 to be the coach. Now you're not still the coach there, right?
No, I went back for spring ball, and they hit me with all the red tape, which was unfortunate, which kind of be expected. I knew that they would have some feelings uh, towards what happened over the past few years, and went back for fall camp. So I went through fall camp with all my guys, with the new coaches that were there, and it was awesome. It was incredible, but there was always that tension, and I totally understood that, and I thought it was best that just like what my motto is, kind of 2T47, which is really weird. It's Second Timothy 4:7. I had to, because I've always been saying this, but it's fight the good fight, finish the race, and remain faithful. And that's only thing I ever wanted to do. And it felt like at that point I've accomplished everything I needed to do. The school, I understand that they don't want me there, and it was tough on everybody. So I just thought it was best, and it was the first decision my wife and I got to make in 8 years. And so we moved back down here to Florida to take care of my father-in-law, whose health isn't doing so hot. But we'll be with him for the rest of his years, and that's a pretty cool place to be.
And now God has you on a different journey where you're going around and you're speaking and you're sharing your book and your story, and you have such a God's given you from this from your when you were brave and you fought against this. Now God's given you a platform that you can use to spread the gospel and to just be a disciple maker. I mean, this is really exciting that God's going to use this story. Now, I want to go back to your childhood, and when I heard you speak, you talked about how you've always been fighting against the odds, and people have been rejecting you. So let's back up. Let's talk about Joe as a kid, little Joe, right? Joe as a kid. Why don't we just share your story about how you grew up?
Yeah, really weird is that I was an unwanted pregnancy, so I could have been easily aborted. And to think about that now really puts things into perspective. But I was given up at birth, and a family adopted me. Kid, next thing you know, they started having kids left and right, and they didn't really need us anymore. And I became a really angry kid, and I was the one that was always in trouble, always fighting. I was a runaway. I was getting kicked out of my house. So I kind of went down the really bad roads and just got angrier and angrier. And I got kicked out of every school I went to. I think I was trying to count, and it was like 8 different schools that I did between junior high and high school. And I mean, I guess, suspended. I got expelled in third grade. Now, I don't remember how old you are in third grade, but that's a pretty small kid. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
I was the worst of the worst, and I just was mad at the world, and the only thing I wanted to do was just fight. I was in and out of group homes, and foster homes, boys' homes, and even though I had people speaking into my life, I didn't have anybody to help guide me, and I finally, got to the point where, I needed to do something because I was in and out on, Friday nights being locked up in that's not a cool place to be.
Mm.
So I joined the Marine Corps, which was my saving grace, and I really found my calling where I could take that anger and be able to fight legally, but also find a discipline to change my life around and find out that it wasn't all about me. I was part of something bigger and something much better than just myself.
I love how you share about anger, because there's definitely a connection between fatherlessness and anger. I just actually put a reel out. I did one of those, those reels that are saying, I grew up fatherless. Of course I did this. And you've seen those different reels that are out there where people are like, hey, I'm from Pennsylvania. Of course I like whatever. Do you ever see those reels where they have those out there? Well, I did a video like that recently, and I talked about I grew up fatherless. Of course I struggle with anger. And I talked about how I even choked a kid when I was in seventh grade, and I got into fights, and because I had a lot of anger growing up. And so I was wondering, can you talk more about that with the anger that you had? Why were you so angry? Because there's a lot of kids that we work with that are dealing with their anger. Why were you so angry?
I really didn't understand it when I was a kid. I felt instantly rejected when you find out
Yeah.
that you were adopted. Number one, it kind of takes you by surprise, but it kind of made sense at the same time because I didn't feel like I was ever part of that family. And there was that I don't know, divide that was kind of there. And when I found out that I was adopted and I was treated differently than everybody else, I just think that I felt rejected by not just my adoptive parents, but the ones who brought me into the world. You have that just abandonment issues, I guess what the psychologists call it. But I just got angry and angrier, and I didn't want anybody to get close to me because everybody that got close to me, I either ended up hurting them or they hurt me. And I just I never really processed all this, but it was terrible not having anybody. You see your friends that go out and play with their dads, they go fishing and stuff. And if I ever did that, it was with my like one of my or two of my closest friends got to go hang out at their families' houses. And the schools, they totally failed me. I did have a couple of good coaches, and I seemed to gravitate towards them because they it seemed to care more about me as a person, but I still couldn't find anybody to help me process that anger. And everybody that I did get close to, I always ended up scaring away or hurting, and I just caused pain wherever I went. And it's just horrible, and it just that stuff just keeps going and going and going, and it kind of picks up speed, and you can't get away from it.
Yeah, a lot of times you feel like we talk about with our ministry, your life's off balance whenever you don't have a dad or a mom or both in your life, and you wonder, why are these kids so angry, or why are they going to addictions, or why are they pursuing relationships or friendships that are unhealthy, or what? Because their life's off balance. And so your life was off balance. God created where it's supposed to be a mom or dad or both, and obviously your life was off balance in the situation you were in. How did God bring it back into balance? What tools did God use over the years to help you get your life back into balance?
Yeah, well, I never realized what unbalanced was. Even when when I went into the Marine Corps, I found a family and I found what I thought was, my place on this earth. But eventually that has to go away. And it's very one-sided. I had two other marriages that I absolutely destroyed. I mean,
Mm,
I had no guide, no model to go after. So I mean, I even hurt the people that I was married to, and I had a kid, which was terrible because I was more married to the Marine Corps and committed to the Corps than I was to my family. So I was a terrible dad. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I am just repeating this cycle over and over again. And when I was getting ready to get out of the Marine Corps, and I met up with my childhood sweetheart, and I've been in love with her my whole entire life.
mm,
And we ended up getting married, and she was going to church, and I was, the heathen. And eventually, we were fighting so bad, and things were so messed up between
mm.
myself and her. She had some kids, so being the insta dad and everything, I was failing. I was failing as a husband. I was failing as a father, and I had no other place to turn because there's no guide. I didn't get a book or got taught how to deal with these things. Growing up, I had no model for me, and thank God that I ended up going to church with her, and I finally just surrendered to God, and I say, God, because here I am, I'm just about to get a divorce over the stupidest things, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I just fell on the what do they call it, the altar, at church, and I said, God, if you give me my wife, I will give you my life. And that brought everything into total balance, where where it says to become one. I didn't know what that meant, and I heard that, I don't know where I heard that, but you always hear these things about how to become one in the Bible, and it absolutely made sense for the first time in my life that God needed to be the center of it, and we were under His umbrella, and that we became one, and our lives just, I thought, became absolutely perfect. I mean, I thought I had the perfect life because everything was going exactly the way that I've always dreamed it would be, like a fairy tale thing. You meet the girl, you get married, you fall in love, and happily ever after. I thought we were there. I became a much better father, a much better husband, and really just took the focus off of everything. And God just took all the anger away from me and all the hate and resentment that I've held on all these years, and just it just went away when I finally surrendered
Mm.
everything to him.
Wow, that's so good. And I think that speaks to so many, fatherless kids. Can you speak directly at the fatherless, and just right now, just for like the next 30 seconds, and just say something to them about their anger and how they can overcome it?
Yeah. So I do know that there are so many people out there that are just hurting. They got this big hole in their life, and you're either causing it or it's happened to you. For the guys that are out there that are fathers or going to be fathers, you need to be involved in your kids' lives. I mean, that's the most important thing. And if you're a young kid that doesn't have that person in your life, especially as a father figure, man, find somebody, help people out. Go find a coach, go find a friend, go find somebody, because you were not alone. I tell everybody, start out on your knees and talking to God, because
Yeah.
He's the ultimate father. But once you start filling these holes that are in your heart, things will get so much better, because you don't have to be defined by your circumstances. You don't have to be a victim to anything. And I wanted to become more than what everybody told me I would be. I didn't want to be set by my past. I wanted a future. And that's what I just encourage everybody to do, is just look forward instead of behind, and find a way to let go of all that hate and anger that holds you and binds you inside.
Now, did the Marine Corps help you? I know you talked about it a little bit, but can you go a little further on that? How going into the Marines maybe helped you with overcoming some of the trauma from your childhood?
Right. So I was very much a loner. I didn't have any really role models in my life or anything. I didn't belong to. I felt like I was a total loner.
Mm.
And when you go into the Marine Corps, you actually become a Marine. It's not just you're in the service. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but you become something beyond yourself. And that's what was the most amazing thing is when I graduated from boot camp, I was sitting there going, oh my God, yeah, I'm not a failure. I felt like I was, 7 foot tall and bulletproof. I felt like I really accomplished something. And I got to go to combat with my guys, and the 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 teamwork and the brotherhood that you have there. There's no explanation, way to really explain it, but it is the absolute best thing in the world to have people that can count on you and you count on them 100%. And we're there for each other through, especially through a lot of the hard times. And that really builds great relationships with people is when you struggle and you go through those worst times in your life. And I really found the Marine Corps to be that place to, really find what my love was as, and that became, as an American and being able to serve, and the Constitution meant something to me. And I found something that was worth fighting for and defending. And I felt so proud of being able to do that.
Now how did you get into coaching then? How did what was the
It was
route there?
actually a fluke. I was out on a run one day. My wife got me a Bremerton High School shirt, and I was out on a run, and the athletic director pulls up alongside me and starts chatting me up on a run and asked me if I went to Bremerton. He saw the football shirt, and I said, no, I just got a Marine Corps. I never really played football. I don't know much about football. My wife bought me it. And so when he heard I was just got out of the Marine Corps, he said, hey, have you ever thought about coaching? So talk about divine intervention. It's one of those
Yeah.
coincidences that happen in life. Yeah. So that's how it all started. And he pursued me for almost 2 years trying to get me to become a coach. And I found out that that was really what my calling was. I didn't know what a calling really meant. I thought being a husband and being a Marine were the two things that I've always wanted. But this was my absolute calling from God in every way, shape, and form. It absolutely made perfect sense for me for the first time.
Now how did growing up in the way you did help you as a coach working with some of the troubled kids you probably worked with? How did that help?
And I think that was the most important thing is that I had that background. I wasn't the X and O's coach. The most wonderful thing about this calling is that God put me in exactly the place I needed to be. Bremerton is a kind of a poor, blue collar, working class town, military town, and there are so many kids that are there that single parent families. All the kids that are in trouble, the gangbangers and druggies and all the trouble kids all go to Bremerton. We've always had that kind of stigma to Bremerton High School was that that's where all the what was left. And I instantly found, that there were so many kids out there that were in the same boat that I was. And I made a vow that I would never let these kids be alone. And
Right.
my whole job was
That's
just to
good.
take care of them. The other guys had X's and O's. I had the great job of just worrying about the people that were executing the X's and O's. So I became like their father, their brother, their coach. I became all of those things. And it was my full-time job is to take care of these guys on the personal level, not on a football level, but to be able to tell them that they're never alone. They're never going to go through anything. And we went through quite a bit of stuff. And, these moms are doing the best that they can out there, but so many dads were just absent, either, even in the military, being in the military town where they're all deployed, but so many single family homes. And my heart just broke for these guys. And it really, God just, I mean, he made me a magnet to these guys. And we connected so well, and they knew I wasn't the guy that was just talking out of my butt. I knew what was
Yeah.
going on, and I could relate. being in boys' homes and group homes and all those other things, you see the worst that could happen to kids. So these kids were not going through anything that I haven't seen or dealt with myself or experienced. And I could really love these guys and take care of them as a young man to help them become a better young man.
Now, speaking to the coaches out there, because that's definitely a big influence in kids' lives. What are some things, practical tips that you could do to help as a coach, or even as a youth pastor or teacher or whatever? What are some practical tips you have for people that are working with kids like this?
Yeah, I just happened to be the one that had the blessing of having so many kids that needed a dad or a role model in their lives. And even the ones that came from a great family, you just bond with these kids. And
Yeah.
it's not looking at them as, they're in your youth group or they are on your football team. It's opening your heart to these guys and giving them 100% of everything. And I wish I had the magic wand or the perfect words, but there's so many kids out there that are hurting, and if you just look beyond the surface and really, if you look at a kid and talk to a kid and spend any time with them, you could tell if there's a hole in their heart, and just be aware of who's around you. A lot of people like to take care of the easy kids, but it's the ones that are really hurting and are usually the ones in trouble that are defiant. These are the ones that really need it the most. So don't reject any kid, especially the tough ones. Those are the ones that you really need to get a hold of and just embrace them and love them.
Now, when did you start doing the prayer and like make it focus on God with your team? Was that from the beginning, or how did that start?
Yeah, so I watched Fates and the Giants. I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Oh yeah.
I really stole it just right out of the movie. I got asked to coach on I went to the job interview on a Friday, and I said, "Give me the weekend to think about it." Over that weekend, Facing the Giants came on, and just I fell to my knees and just again, here I am trying to be this tough Marine. I'm bawling my eyes out on my living room floor, and I said, "God, I hear my calling. I will coach, and I will give the glory after every game, win or lose, right there on the battlefield." So that was my covenant with God, and that's what I did from the very first game. So we have 2 games every week, the varsity and the junior varsity, and I was the head coach of the JV. So I had that opportunity to be able to pray twice a week, giving God thanks to God and for what those guys just did on the field. And it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with them and being so grateful for that. So there was nothing that I didn't steal from somebody else. I mean, you see the guys that are praying on the 50-yard line. I've seen them out on the pros for years doing this. So I just kind of gathered everything together, and that's what it was, a simple little not even a 30-second prayer after the game right there on the 50-yard line.
How did that impact the players and the coaches? Did you see any results from that?
Yeah, so nobody really knew what I was doing, probably for the first couple months. Some of the kids came out afterwards and say, "Coach, what were you doing out there?" Because they see me hanging out afterwards after I get done talking to, when you shake hands with the other team and you talk to the other coaches. And I would come back and I would just stand there on the 50-yard line, make sure my guys are going where they needed to go, and just face the scoreboard and just take a knee. Well, people are going to notice that. And they asked what I was doing. I said, "Man, I was just thanking God for what you guys did and me being part of it."
Hmm.
And they wanted to know, they were curious about that, that some of them were Christians and they said, "Hey, can we join you?" And I said, "This is a free country. Of course you can." I thought it was funny because the coaches were like, "I thought you were out there getting grass samples or you're tying your shoe or something." They didn't even know what I was doing. So it was kind of comical when it finally came out, here it is 6 months into the year, and they find out that I'm just out there praying. And so that ought to tell you a little bit about who I am, because I'm not a really religious guy. I don't know the scriptures. I yeah, I'm a terrible Christian. So it was a real eye opener for everybody, but it became very, I don't want to say addicting, but it was there. You could tell that it was something that our communities need, these kids need. It's a point where people could come together and be grateful instead of leaving a football field mad or discouraged or even just thinking about yourself. It was where two teams could come together and be thankful to something else and to our team and really focus on the important things in life and giving thanks to where they really belong.
Did other coaches jump in, or was it just players?
Oh yeah, coaches. We had the pregame in the locker room. We would have prayer, and every single coach did that, and we all took turns doing that prayer. Afterwards, it was hit and miss. I had some coaches that came out there, the head coach on down, that would come out there. I had my best friend who I call him Pappy. He was one of the coaches with me, and he was a practicing Buddhist. So
Oh,
he
wow.
came out there and he did his little chant or whatever it was in his own way. We had other religions that were out there, and it was just a moment of peace and people being thankful, and it was just awesome to see the impact it had on the coaches. And, because coaches, if you lose a game, they can get kind of, well, I don't even know what the right word is that I could say on this, but, they're poor sports and they get their feelings hurt sometimes and they're not thankful for anything. But I wanted to be that light out there, being thankful even in the losses.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it. They weren't thankful for the for the loss. But yeah, that's so I'm sure you were exposed to a lot. Now, how long did you guys do this until you started getting in trouble for it?
Yeah. So we were in our eighth season. So you could figure, 8 years, twice a year or twice a week for 8 years, and 60 kids on each, year. That's a lot of times of being thankful and just taking a knee. So this was just an ongoing thing, and for 8 years. So everybody knew it. Everybody usually participated at least once, or it was no big secret. Everybody knew this was going on. It was no big deal. That's why it was so weird that we went sideways with it, because nobody cared. Kids didn't want to pray. Fine, nobody's forcing them to do anything. This is America, man. Telling somebody that they have to pray is just as bad as telling them that they can't pray. So nobody cared. It was what I did, and if they wanted to join, cool. If they didn't, cool. It was just a normal thing, like getting up in the morning and putting on a shirt. It was just the normal thing to do.
Now, what does it feel like now for you? Because you said you grew up and you had this journey of just feeling rejected, right? And but now you feel probably, and maybe I'm not, maybe you don't, but maybe you feel wanted now. I mean, I was at a convention and they had you speak at it, and so does it feel better now? Does it feel like you're in a time of redemption with that childhood rejection and now like being wanted to speak and things like that?
Yeah, I really haven't processed that. It's so weird to see the from the way that I used to be to the way that I am now. And like you said, God's given me a platform. I just want to be able to share this with everyone and just telling them, look, I am absolutely nobody. I I've always been a nobody. I've never amounted to anything, but God could take the simplest people like me and do something incredible with them. So I just wanted it. I feel so good that it can inspire people and people can see, that wow, we can make a difference in lives. So God's filled so many of those empty holes in my life, especially whoever thought I'd be standing on a stage telling people about this. It's like, "Oh, God, you got a weird sense of humor picking me to do this, but if I could just reach one person and inspire one person or help one person, gosh, I it makes it absolutely 100% worth it."
Well, continuing in that direction, what does God have you to do right now? I mean, you have the book released out. What else is going on?
Well, interestingly enough, we also have a movie coming out this fall called Average Joe, and that's going to come out probably late September or October, or in the first week of October. And it basically follows the book, and it's going to be funny. Obviously, if you read the book, there's some funny parts, but really, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it's going to make you feel every emotion possible. So God had me busy with that, and we'll be promoting that in the book. But really, I get to go around the world and talk to people about the power of God, forgiveness. Man, I wish I had all the right words. That's why I'm so just amazed that God is using somebody like me to have a platform to do this. And that's been what He has me doing now through this season. Is just going around doing that, taking care of Dad here in Florida, and going around the world and talking to them not just about about God, but also about being an American and being a good citizen, and finding out what it means to have the freedoms in our Constitution, and the amendments that people obviously aren't learning in school, but to give them a sense of pride in our country and give them something to work towards, and some things are absolutely worth fighting for.
That's it's just amazing the path that God has you on. I mean, you told us it started with a movie, you being a coach, and now you have your own movie about being a coach. Isn't that incredible to think about? And I don't know if I'm sure you've thought about that. That's it started with a movie, and now I think it's just an amazing thing, and very inspirational stories. I mean, if you've never seen Facing the Giants, if you're watching this, check that movie out. It's a great movie, by the Kendrick brothers, and great movie. But this movie, Average Joe. Now, tell us more about the movie. What all is going to be in that? Is just talking about just your story of being a coach and everything, or does it go to your childhood? Or
Right. Yeah. I know you've probably seen Forrest Gump, but it's very much along the lines of that. Just, this simple guy who went through all these extraordinary things. And it really goes back and forth of showing my entire life of that kid. And, we didn't hold back too much of the kid that I was, to
mm,
really showcase that I was a terrible kid. I mean, horrible. And thank God that they had to do some editing, because this would have been rated R or worse, because I was so bad. But it really shows of this angry, unwanted kid, and really puts together all the pieces until where we are today. And with the story, and not just my life, but my wife's life, and how God brought us both together and puts it into, shows a bigger picture of life, instead of just, the normal things you see every day in TV and movies. This one is, this will really open a lot of eyes, and hopefully just really inspire some people to walk away feeling, like a Rocky movie, where you're like, man, I can do anything. If this guy can do something, man, I'm ready to go. And hopefully, I think it'll be good for a lot of people, especially families, that if you can make it through something like this, 8 years of court cases. And, just the side note is that my wife worked for the school district. So I essentially was
mm.
suing her, and she was the one who kind of had to fire me. So you can imagine what our home life was like. And it really shows all the different nuances of this, and shows what life really is about. It's not movie. It's not Hollywood. This is real stuff, real life, pain and joy.
That's so good, Joe. And we're gonna wrap up here in just a minute, but tell us more about where they can find you. I saw the trailer for the movie at the NRB, and it looks really good. I'm excited to see it. But just tell us where they can find you, find your book, find more information about what you're doing.
Yeah, I know I'm not a real original guy, but the book Average Joe, you could get that anywhere. The movie will be coming out. Average Joe, you can start Googling that now and start seeing what it's all about. But if you want to find me or more information, CoachJoeKennedy.com. I know it's not very original, but that's me, Coach Joe Kennedy. So it's pretty simple to find me. I am on Facebook, Instagram, all those things, and I talk to anybody and everybody. And I mean, you know me, you give me your phone number, we're going to be talking. You want to text me, we're going to be texting. I'm just me. So I'm really accessible at all times for everyone. And God's given me that opportunity, and I'm going to take advantage of it.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for being on with us. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask you: is there anything else you want to say to a fatherless individual, or a single mom, or just a motherless individual, or anybody going through what you went through growing up? Just any last words you want to say to them to encourage them?
Wow. I could really probably spend hours of that. That I wish I had the words. I really don't. I know how frustrating and everything it is in life, and it feels like things are absolutely in the worst light, and you're never going to get out of these places. And people do the best that they can. I mean, people aren't inherently evil. I really don't believe that. Everybody is worth something, and just look forward to the future, because nothing in the past is going to matter. Everything in the future is. And if I could help you guys find somebody that can, start on your knees and get involved in a church and family and in your schools. But you need to belong to something. Shutting things off and hiding all that pain will not do anybody any good. And you need to find a way to let go of that. And I think God's the perfect place to start.
That's so good. Well, thanks so much for being on with us, Joe. We really appreciate it. Excited to see the movie coming up soon.
Awesome. I look forward to talking to you again, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. We want to now challenge you to take the next step by either starting a single mom community group in your church or with your ministry, or by joining our network of God is My Dad churches and ministries. Isn't it a great experience to be able to start a single mom community group?
Yeah, and it's just, if you talk to single moms, a lot of times what they'll tell you is the one thing they're lacking is that community, just a group that they can go in and they know there's no judgment. You know, everyone may not have the same situation. Everyone doesn't know what they're going through, but they can go in and they know there's no judgment. And it takes that kind of that restriction and that wall down for them so that they can share and then that they can grow in Christ.
And our single mom community groups are a wonderful ministry. And if your church can start one, we'd love to have you. We can help you get set up. We have the curriculum and all the resources you need. If you can't start one, we'd love to have you start by joining our network of churches and ministries, our God is My Dad network of churches and ministries, where you can get your church or your ministry on our map, and people can find you and find your ministry in your church so that they can get plugged into your church or ministry locally. So check that out. You can find all these resources at lifefactors.org. We have books, we have all kinds of content on there at lifefactors.org. Check it out today.